Professor Padyachi, members of Peace and Justice Sri Lanka, Justice Navanithan Pillai, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I thank you very much for inviting me, a Sinhalese from the majority community, to take part in this very important meeting. I'm sorry I'm unable to get there because of problems with the passport and health issues. I will address you on the future of the Tamil people in the north and the east of Sri Lanka. Because I have campaigned for them since 1948, and that's a long time, 6.5 decades. Initially for the plantation Tamils, when they were disenfranchised and decitizenized in one of the worst acts of political barbarism anywhere in the world. 1/7 of the population were made into non-people. 1956, I changed over to campaign for the indigenous Tamils, when a member of my family, my uncle, S.W.R.D. Bandaranaike, got into blatant discrimination and changed the official language from English to Sinhalese only, to the exclusion of Tamil. And when he was assassinated by a Buddhist monk, I might add, they're a very violent lot, the politically active Buddhist monks, in stepped his wife, Sirima Bandaranaike, the world's first Prime Minister. He may well have been, but she was also dreadful in the sense that she is the one who set the bar higher for Tamil students to enter the university. I was at that time senior lecturer in medicine, and I told Auntie Sirima, this is the last thing that you should have done, because these people, for them, education is almost like a god. And if you discriminate against them in education, they will pick up arms, which is what they did. What has the Sirisena government done? Change from a brutal, barbaric Rajapaksa regime? Sure. He thought it was an improvement, and it was to a certain extent in my area, the area I come from. But where the Tamil people are concerned in the north and the east, there has been no change, none whatsoever. The overwhelmingly Sinhalese armed forces, 99% Sinhalese, and the police, 95% Sinhalese, will remain in the north and the east. Of that there is no doubt. The de facto president, who is Ranil Wickremesinghe, the so-called Prime Minister, you see, in Sri Lanka there are two presidents, the de jure president and the de facto president. Earlier it was Mahinda Rajapaksa, elected president, de facto president Gotabaya Rajapaksa. Now we have elected president Sirisena, de facto president Ranil Wickremesinghe, the so-called Prime Minister. And Prime Minister Wickremesinghe says, and Sirisena will of course agree, and war criminal Sarath Fonseca, who supports the government, says the army will stay in the north and the east. You see, the north and the east is not under the Sri Lankan government. It's under the military. It's a military regime, it's a police state. Nothing will change there. He has said that internationally famous human rights groups will not be allowed into the country. Well, if they have nothing to hide, why exclude Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch and International Crisis Group? Why? Not allowed into the north and the east, and not even allowed into Sri Lanka. The Prevention of Terrorism Act will stay. Well, there are no terrorists. They've been crushed. So-called terrorists have been crushed. The Prevention of Terrorism Act has been the curse of Sri Lanka. It is under that act that a number of abductions, illegal detentions, and murder, etc. has occurred. People detained under the Prevention of Terrorism Act do not need to be produced before a court of law at all for 18 months and do not need to be charged at all. The PTA with the impunity it grants security force personnel remains the most problematic aspect of the Sri Lankan policing force. There has been a major riot, almost a riot, a hunger strike on the 15th of October this year, when hundreds of people detained under the Prevention of Terrorism Act went on a hunger strike demanding that their cases be either tried or that they would be discharged. And the statistics are that some of them in the magazine prison in Colombo had been there for 5 to 15 years, and one had been detained for 23 years. It's almost getting to be like Nelson Mandela. Sirisena boasts that the governor of the northern province, chap called Army Major, he has been replaced. Yes, surely. General Chandrasiri was replaced by a civilian governor, Mr. Palyakara, a veteran diplomat. Might be a veteran diplomat, but is also a downright liar. He was the permanent representative of Sri Lanka to the United Nations in August 2008 to August 2009. During the final months of the armed conflict, he defended the Sri Lankan military at the United Nations Security Council of all places, denying that they fired heavy weapons into the no-fire zone. That was a blatant lie, as was shown by the UK Channel 4 Killing Fields of Sri Lanka, and my own DVD. I produced some 12 DVDs. This one, Genocide, Crimes Against Humanity and Isolation and Violation of International Law. That shows the bombs being dropped on the no-fire zone. Hardly a great achievement having that guy as the governor of the northern province. Sirisena says that the lands taken over will be handed over to their rightful owners. 8,000 acres plus of Tamil lands, some of the most fertile in the north, have been taken over by the military, of which Sirisena was able to recover only some 600 acres. He said that's all he could get from the armed forces. Nonsense, isn't it? He is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. He is the defense minister. He is the executive president with sweeping powers. If that man can't order the armed forces to hand back the lands, and he expects us to believe it, he must think that we are fools. We are not. What else has he done? Nothing much. He had a 100-day program, as you know, soon after his election, in which he was going to settle all the problems confronting Sri Lanka. You know, the word Tamil was not even mentioned. So much for Sirisena's concern about the Tamil people. What about the white vans? Have they disappeared? Yes. The Gotabaya Rajapaksa white vans have disappeared, but the rest have not. See, it's a lucrative business, white vanning. You get a white van, take off the number plates, abduct somebody, put him in, torture him until he comes up with the necessary money to rescue the patient. That's not disappeared. I think it was Minister Vigneswaran who, in a talk in India, said that white vanning was not uncommon now in Batticaloa, and I gather that it's now even in Jaffna. I refer to you to a very important recent publication by a friend of mine, Professor Daya Somasundaram, Professor of Psychiatry in the University of Jaffna. And he has written a paper on a lost generation of Tamil youths. It's a very boring paper. He says that illicit drugs are being distributed in Jaffna, almost certainly by the armed forces, and that education is in chaos. You see, it is in chaos because the teachers in a number of schools are ex-military men who have no expertise in teaching, nor in the language. They don't speak Tamil. And how can you teach Tamil kids? And he makes the serious statement that 50% of Tamil children fail the GCE, General Certificate of Education, O-levels, and only 15% went on to university education. For me, who has trained medical students, scores and scores of them when I was senior lecturer in medicine, that is a shattering comment, because I know that the medical students the Tamil students in my batch whom I taught, a large number of them came from Jaffna. Jaffna must produce the largest number of professionals of any country in the world, and for that area to have a 50% failure rate in the GCE O level is outrageous. Is Sirisena concerned about it? Doesn't seem to be. Singalization, what is that? That is converting an area that is Tamil into Sinhalese. That's what happened in Ampare on the eastern coast when I was there, when I was younger. Ampare was a Tamil area, 99% of people were Tamils. And that dreadful man, the first Prime Minister of Ceylon, D.S. Serenaka, took thousands of people from the Sinhalese south and settled them in Ampare, which today is a Sinhalese area. That is Singalization, and that is what is happening in the Tamil areas. It is Singalization. The Sinhalese are being taken in bulk and settled in the homeland of the Tamil people. And when the Tamils say the north and the east is our Tamil homeland, it won't be, not unless we act. Buddhistization, what is that? That is converting area that is essentially Hindu and Christian into and wiping out the temples and the churches and replacing them with Buddhist shrines. Why have Buddhist shrines in an area where there are no Buddhists? Because that is Buddhistization. That is to make Sri Lanka into a Sinhala Buddhist country. It's based on this dreadful document, chronicle called the Mahavamsa, the Great Chronicle, written by a Buddhist monk of the 4th century AD about what he thought occurred in the 5th century BC. He said that the Sinhalese are the descendants of an Indian Prince Vijaya, the grandson of a lion, hence the lion on the lion flag. Then he gets into what I call dangerous nonsense and says that Buddha on his deathbed called the king of gods and said, I am nominating that country, Lanka, to be the custodian of my teaching. That is why Sinhalese claim that Sri Lanka is a Sinhala Buddhist country. As Voltaire so rightly says, those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities, and that's what's been happening all these years in Sri Lanka. Well, if Sri Lanka is going to be a Sinhala Buddhist country, there is no option to the establishment of a separate Tamil state, Tamileelam. Tamileelam is not what the Tamils wanted. They didn't even want federation. For heaven's sake, when Chevanagam suggested a federal state, he lost his seat in the next parliamentary election. Yet these same people in 1977 voted overwhelmingly for the establishment of a separate Tamil state. Federation is still possible, but not federation with Colombo, but federation with India in a Pondicherry style setup. And I think this is one of the things that we should be exploring, whether we can set up a federal system in federation with India. If Sri Lanka is going to be a Sinhala Buddhist country, what do you do with the Tamils? There are 2.5 million Tamils there left. You can drive them out of the country. 1.1 million have already been driven out. But there are still 2.5 million left. What do you do with them? We can make them non-people, like what we did to the plantation Tamils. Deny them everything. They are citizens only by name. They can't fish, no agriculture, cannot get jobs. They are just watching. Thirdly, you can make them disappear. Sri Lanka has the second highest rate of disappearances in the world, second only to Iraq. You can kill them. Well, that is genocide. Genocide means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, religious, racial or ethnic group. The numbers are immaterial. It could be 50, 500 or, as Mr. Hitler decided, 6 million. I urge you to try and get this book if you can. It's called Genocide in Sri Lanka. It is written by an American friend of mine, a Tamil, in which he sets out genocide in no uncertain way. He ends with this. If this is not genocide, then what is it? I would say that it's more than physical genocide. It is cultural genocide, economic genocide, linguistic genocide, and genocide in every possible way. Tamil culture is being destroyed. The Tamil people are being destroyed. What about the UN Human Rights High Commissioner's report, Prince Zaid? Well, it's a human rights issue. Amnesty International not even mentioned. Human Rights Watch not even mentioned. Shows how seriously Zaid takes this matter. Secondly, there is no penalty. If Zaid's report goes to Sri Lanka, which it has, and they toss it in the dustbin, there is no answer that Zaid has produced. Worse still, if they say, yes, we'll implement it all, and then do nothing, Zaid still has no answer. So what is the answer? The answer is, I've said, the establishment of a separate Tamil state. The Sinhalese say that Sri Lanka is too small to be divided. That's nonsense. The single state after division, 18,000 square miles, is larger than 63 UN nations. The Tamil area, 7,200 square miles, is larger than 38 UN nations. I think that the reason why a separate Tamil state is not viable because it will be blocked by India. That is why I think a confederate state is probably the answer. The other question is, it's not what we want. We got to ask the people who are affected by all this, the people in the north and the east, what they want. In other words, I'm asking for a referendum, as we did in East Timor. We asked the East Timorese people, what do you want? Do you want to be under the Indonesian or do you want a separate country? And they voted overwhelmingly. And they voted with UN troops present, not with the Sinhalese hoodlum in rifles running around. They removed all the Indonesian troops and replaced them with UN troops, which is what we need in Sri Lanka. So what can we do? We can, for the second time I'm saying this because it's so important, demand the immediate admission of Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch and International Crisis Group into that country. It has to be done now. Tomorrow may be too late for the Tamils. Two, to publicize what is going on. There are stacks and stacks of information published by Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, Yasmin Suka and others on the situation in Sri Lanka. It's not for lack of information. We've got to publicize it. We've got to charge the criminals responsible. We start off with Gotabaya Rajapaksa. The Americans have got to file action against Gotabaya Rajapaksa and ask for his extradition. We've got to isolate Sri Lanka, as we did with apartheid South Africa. You see, apartheid South Africa is an internal affair of South Africa, no question. But the world opposed apartheid South Africa because what they were doing was wrong. And what the Sinhalese leaders have been doing to the Tamil people from independence has been simply wrong. That is why I have campaigned for the right of the Tamil people, my Tamil people, to live with equality, dignity and safety, and now to live at all. We have to isolate Sri Lanka and say no to Sri Lanka. No tourists, we are not going there, we are not sending money, and we will block whatever money is going there from the IMF and wherever else we have power. We have to organize meetings such as this. These are very important meetings, but at the end of it, we got to have a way forward to say, right, what's the next step? And if we don't have that next step, then it's a waste of time. What about me? Well, at 84, I may not be around for too much time. Be that as it may, I intend to go on fighting or struggling for the right of the Tamil people to live with equality, dignity and safety as I have done for the last 6.5 decades. When I was last in South Africa, I met Archbishop Desmond Tutu. The photograph is at the back of my book. And he kept saying, pacing up and down, saying, isn't it wonderful that Sinhalese from the majority community should be campaigning for the right of the Tamil people to live with equality and dignity all these many years. Having listened to it for the third time, I said, Archbishop, I disagree. This is not a Sinhalese issue or a Tamil issue. It's a humanitarian issue that should arouse the concerns of every decent person who calls himself Sinhalese. I may not have been able to come to Durban, but if you have another meeting, be it in London or in South Africa or in New York or wherever, and you are discussing the plight of the Tamil people, I will surely be there, invited or not invited. Thank you very much.